A week ago, no one had heard of Jared Loughner, but after a shooting spree at a community event held by Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords in Tucson, Arizona, killed 6 and wounded 13 others, including the Congresswoman herself, Loughner has quickly been compared with infamous murderers who sought notoriety. For all the warnings about and the money spent to prevent terrorism, law enforcement authorities say facts show the greater and more likely threat in this country comes from people like Loughner, the dangerous lone wolves. America has been plagued for decades by acts of violence attributed to lone wolves.
Is there a doctor in the house?
The assassinations of the 1960s made household names of the men responsible, and the number of men, mostly young, who have sought similar notoriety has only seemed to have increased every year since then, up to this weekend's accused murderer, Jared Loughner.
I think we call them lone wolves because it's like they can't work in the pack. In other words, they can't work in society.
Are there a lot of these lone wolves in this country?
I believe there are thousands of people like Mr. Loughner.
The loner who shot and killed the Beatle John Lennon is a textbook case. The common theme with Mark David Chapman and history's other lone wolves is not ideology or politics or religion, according to forensic psychiatrist Dr. Michael Weldner of New York University.
The mass shooter will always justify in some righteous or ideological way. But at the end of the day, what drives that person is a sense that they had high expectations for themselves. They recognize that they never will amount to everything they dreamed of, and they choose something that the public has given so much attention to and make a decision at some point, I can be larger than life, and make a decision to destroy the society around them.
In a prison interview with ABC News, Chapman told Barbara Walters why he killed John Lennon.
John Lennon fell into a very deep hole, a hole that was so deep inside of me that I thought by killing him I would acquire his fame.
The celebrity musician had somehow disappointed Chapman.
And I see this real somebody who I perceived at the time to be a phony. My nobody was wanting to strike down that somebody. I heard this voice, not an audible voice, but an inaudible voice saying over and over, do it, do it, do it, do it.
He decided that John Lennon was a fake. John Lennon's assassination gave him immortality.
The lone wolf shooters almost always leave behind signals, or now on the internet, video statements. 23-year-old Sung-Wee Cho mailed this tape to NBC News before he killed 32 students at Virginia Tech 4 years ago.
You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience.
He methodically went room to room, and people described him as basically not changing expression, looking at people, because he's not shooting human beings. He's shooting things that have caused him pain and anger.
Law enforcement professionals and psychiatrists say another classic lone wolf trait involves sexual dysfunction. 48-year-old George Sedini killed 3 women at a Pittsburgh health club after months of rejection by women he had asked on dates.
It is easy for me to hide from my emotions for one more day.
Law enforcement officials say spotting a lone wolf before he can kill is highly unlikely. The family of so-called Unabomber Ted Kaczynski knew he had mental health issues, but did not realize he had turned violent until his manifesto was published in newspapers and his brother David saw it and called the FBI.
When we talk about a lone wolf, we have to make distinctions. People like my brother were not just a loner, they were people. My brother was diagnosed with very serious mental illness, schizophrenia, and that, this case, as far as I can tell, from what little I know, has mental illness written all over it. There are cases like my brother's where the psychotic delusions precipitate violent behavior, and it's very, very difficult to predict.
The shooting in Arizona has led to condemnation of talk radio and hard-edged politics that some say incite the mentally unstable. Dr. Weldner does not agree.
If we feel that civility in the public discourse is going to take away mass shooting, we're mistaken, because the one common thread of mass shooting is it's what does the shooter get out of it? And the shooter recognizes If you assassinate a political figure, you will be notorious. I think John Lennon had more to do with this than Sarah Palin.
Now in Washington, the great fear among law enforcement is of copycat lone wolves who may target other unguarded members of Congress.
What can we really do? If you're talking about thousands upon thousands of people out there, it's a scary thought.
In this country, these lone wolves do pose a danger as great as the organized terrorists?
I think there may be even more so, just because they're here, they're in our communities.
The suspect in Arizona was easily and legally able to buy his weapon at this store outside Tucson. Every country has unstable people, but not every country has such liberal gun laws.
What that means is that in order to lower the number of shootings and lethal shootings, whether mass shootings or not, you have to do something to address the availability of guns.
Does the easy availability of weapons play a role here, do you think?
In my professional opinion, it doesn't.
Received the thanks of a very grateful state. Daniel?
Dr. Wellner says the real answer is to focus more on the heroes of the shooting, such as Congresswoman Gifford's intern, who is recognized today in the Arizona legislature, and to focus less on those responsible for the pain and suffering.
It's an attention-seeking crime, which is why the perpetrators of mass shooting should be remembered as rejects, losers, perverts, because then they won't be copied. That is a key message not just for the press, but it's a message for teachers, it's a message for neighborhoods, and it's how we as a society can eliminate something that's distinctively American.
For continuing coverage of this story and other daily investigations, visit abcnews.com. Just click on the blotter. You can also follow me and the ABC News investigative team on Facebook and Twitter.